Winless since the trade deadline. That is one way to describe our Seattle Kraken. I have a few other thoughts, including is this season a failure? All that and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are the Seattle Kraken.
All right, Seattle hockey fans, we have plenty to talk about on today's episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Make sure you download the Gametime app today, and if you use promo code Locked On, you will get $20 off your first purchase of tickets at Gametime. Whew. Winless since the trade deadline. I don't know, like when we look back on this in 100 years, even less, will this be, the plight of Wenberg, and will he be the Bambino for the Seattle Kraken? I mean, arguably you could say that about some other players, arguably, but we'll see. I guess it all depends on how some of the former Seattle Kraken players, how their teams fare in the playoffs. Well, we know for sure Ryan Donato and Chicago aren't going to be doing much, but we'll have to see about some of the other teams. Anyway, let's get into this. I have been traveling. One of my sisters is getting married, so you got all the wedding activities and whatnot. So been traveling a little bit. But even if I wasn't traveling, these episodes would have been hard to do, because it's I have been talking about this Seattle Kraken team. They baffled me. They kind of ticked me off early in the season coming out of training camp. Then they were baffling. And then you try to draw it back a little bit because of all the injuries. And that injury bug just kept going. And then we see Joey Daccord finally getting some time. And you're thinking, all right, this is good. And then you start noticing, oh no, we're using Joey Dax too much. Same old song, seen this before. And lo and behold, it would appear that we have broken Joey Daccord. Maybe Philip Grubauer as well. Who knows? And so now we sit here, winless since the trade deadline. And this is an uninspiring team. That's how they're playing anyway. I'm not making any indictments on them as individuals, as personalities, as people, but as a team, we are uninspired. As a team, we are lackluster. As a team, we are inconsistent. And none of those things are going to be beneficial to a team that is technically not eliminated from the playoffs, but at this point might as well be. And I'll take you to, I put out some comments to our Locked On Kraken insiders and got some comments that some of them I'll read. And we have a Locked On AMA coming up. So if you want to be a part of the AMA and the Locked On Kraken insiders, make sure you text 918-731-3154 on your cellular device, 918-731-3154 to join us on a platform called Subtext. Oh, what is the subtext for this Seattle Kraken team? And it comes to a question that I'm going to ask later on in the show, but is this season a failure? But right now we got to talk about some Kraken crap, because we've definitely seen some Kraken crap, whether it was Joey Daccord misplaying a puck, this bad defense, only scoring a handful of goals that you could count on one hand in the last handful of games, playing uninspiring hockey. I really don't know how else to describe it. It's dull, it's dry, it's on life support. I don't know. This is not a great Seattle Kraken team right now. And I think that they can be better. I know that we've talked about them being better, but now it's at the point of, well, when is it going to get better? We're also seeing the lines change up again. We're going to hear from Ellie Tolvanen on the show, who was on the top line with Beniers in the last game. It's just like throwing spaghetti up against the wall and none of it, and I mean none of it sticking. But you keep throwing it, and then you don't realize that you've overcooked the space. It's not going to stick. It's not going to stick. So we have to get the recipe right. We have to get the timing right in order to make something stick for the Seattle Kraken team. And so that becomes the question. Yes, I want to talk about, is this season a failure? We'll talk about that a little bit later on the show. But we also have to talk about, where do we need to make changes? Because, and we talked about this a little bit earlier on in the season, a lot of people talking about that perhaps the days are numbered for Dave Hakstol. The way this season is looking to wind down, I mean, that's not surprising. It's not, I don't think that answers, it doesn't solve the core problems for the Seattle Kraken. That being said, we cannot ignore that at least part of the issue, at some point, we have to point to leadership. And yes, I'm talking about Dave Hakstol and the coaching staff. We've talked about defensive structure for the Seattle Kraken team. I think also you have to look at leadership. Everyone was clamoring and dying for a captain to be named. And, the leadership on this squad, you have to look at them as well. It's hard, but heavy is the head, pay the cost to be the boss, whatever phrase you want to say. At the end of the day, you put leaders in roles to get things done. And whether you're talking about the players, whether you're talking about the leadership on the roster, whether you're talking about the coaching staff, and to me, the more salient, the more profound issue with this team is front office. And maybe not making the right moves at the right time. How many times have we heard Coach Hack talk about making the right plays at the right time? He loves to see that, the right saves at the right time. He loves to see it. We're not seeing that from the Seattle Kraken organization right now. And so is this season a failure? I've been talking about all season that is predicated, even if last season was a failure, is all predicated on how the Seattle Kraken finish this year. And the way things are shaping up with, let's see, we've got the rest of this week and then another 4 weeks, another month of the regular season, which is likely, again, the season for the Seattle Kraken. There's a lot of questions to be asked. Now, I'm asking this question, is this a failure? And I want you to think about that word, how you characterize that word, and then we're going to talk about it. But let's talk about the Kraken crap. Let's just talk about the things that are burning my grits, as they say in the South. I took a trip down to my alma mater, so of course I've got some of the colloquialisms fresh on my mind. But, something that burns my grits is just the lack of decisiveness. And if you've been watching the last handful of games, checking out the Root Sports crew, I think Nick Olchek has been explicitly saying this for the last handful of games. Allison Lucan does an amazing job with the data-driven analysis to then provide context for this. But basically, what our analysts are saying, JT Brown saying it as well, and what your host of Locked On Kraken is saying, is that we are not creating opportunities because we're holding on to the puck. We're not making decisions. We have guys that are passing up high danger chances for a shot or for a pass that they try to get through the slot and then is disrupted and becomes a turnover. Who's going to take the lead? Who's going to take the wheel, take the reins? Again, whatever you want to say. It just looks at times like nobody wants to be that guy, right? I talked about OGers, everydayers, I talked about Matty Beniers. He felt like he was ready to be that guy in a lot of situations. And not only with Beniers, but unfortunately with a lot of other players, we've seen that happen. If we look at just, the shots on goal against the Sabres, where we lose a game 6-2, we had 34 shots on goal to the Sabres, 30 shots. So we are giving up, or we're taking more shots than our opponents. And that's been a trend happening for a little bit here. But those shots they're not yielding anything for us. And we are giving away high danger chances, or at least chances that become scoring chances, to teams that are undershooting us. So we're not getting it done on either side of the puck. We're giving up chances and we are not eliminating chances. I mean, I went on a rant. What game was that? I think it was the last game against Vegas, who we play tomorrow. And JT, I believe it was JT broke this down. It was either JT or Nick broke this down in the last handful of broadcasts. 2 players teeing up and defending the same offensive player. That's a lack of awareness. That's a lack of understanding of the situation at some points in time. There's just so many things that are elemental, that are fundamental to good hockey that the Seattle Kraken just are not doing right now. It's just not happening. And it's extremely frustrating. We've heard from Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. We've heard from so many people. But again, if we just look at the Sabres, if we just look at the game, the 6-2 game against the Sabres, I can paint you a picture in 2 images. And these are the same images that we've been talking about all season. So for those of you who listen to the show regularly, you probably know what website I'm going to, and you probably know what graphics I'm going to show, because it's the same. And that's what's infuriating. Yes, I'm going to Natural Stat Trick. Yes, I'm going to Game Flow and the heat map. Look at the game flow. There's no flow. There's absolutely not. Look, puck drops and everything belongs to the Sabres. With a little blip late in the game because we decide, maybe we'll wake up and I guess try to save face. But at this point, it's done. I don't want you fighting at the end of games when you're losing 6-2, when you're only scoring, a goal every other day. I don't want to see that. It's empty. It's shallow. It is artificial. Bring that same energy throughout games and play the way you're supposed to play, and play the way that you can play. And then maybe I'll give you a gold star for your effort. But I'm not giving gold stars for effort at the end of games that are all but, we fought hard in the last 2 minutes of the game. I'm not doing that. Come on. We're beyond that, or we should be. Game flow, abysmal all season for the Seattle Kraken. And just, this is not even the most egregious if you're watching on YouTube, but look at how the Sabres, this is the heat map. The Sabres are using most every piece of the ice in their offensive zone. And the Seattle Kraken are just trying to generate in that high danger area. Now, on the one hand, of course, you want high danger chances, but you have to be able to use the full length and width of the ice to create high danger chances. You have to, just like literally every team does to us, you have to get your goaltender moving. You have to get the defense out of position, and that's how you get your chances. But to only settle for these shots in the low slot, how's that working out, Seattle? How's that working out? because we're not scoring. And we keep saying, I'm not the only one saying it. Even the players are saying that we are, I'm paraphrasing, but offensively anemic. You can't score if you don't have scoring chances. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of what's been happening, not even as of late with the Seattle. That is the theme of this season for the Seattle Kraken. And it's extremely frustrating because we've changed lines. We made a trade. What are we doing? Who's responsible for fixing this? Because right now, to me, I'm leaning towards, and I've been saying this since the off season. And so I'm going to get hella bullish about it right now. I've been saying since the off season, we didn't do enough. And look at us now. It's not enough. And please miss me with, oh my gosh, oh, look at Andre Burakovsky starting to score finally late in the season. Bruh. It's not enough. Period. You're not going to change my mind. It's not enough. We'll talk about, is this a failure? Again, I want you to think about that word, how you define it. This is an activity I want you to do, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're listening on or watching on Amazon Fire TV, Sirius SXM. Just pause if you have to. Write it down. How do you define failure? And then we'll talk about it. And then I'll try to answer that question. But again, we have an AMA coming up. And so if you want to get into more detail, because best believe I have more thoughts. If you want to get into more detail, I'll give you that. Again, how you can get involved with the AMA. I don't know. It's not meant to be a rant episode, but it will be spicy. It will be, pretty direct because this is some Kraken crap, if I ever. Let's move on. We got more to talk about coming up on Locked On Kraken. Now, today's episode of Locked On Kraken is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, of which I have very little of when it comes to the Seattle Kraken. But anyway, that's what brings home the winning trophy. And it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up, which is also what the Seattle Kraken need to do, to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your hard-earned money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home the win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. And the eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. I want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Locked On Sports Today, of course. Baseball fans, mark your calendars because today, March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can tune in for the best MLB season preview coming exclusively on Locked On Sports Today. On March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, be the first to get local insight from the MLB local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or free on Amazon Fire TV Channels app. All right, folks. Is this season a failure? Have you looked up the definition? We're going to talk about it in the next segment, so I hope you're ready. But let's get into some notes and quotes. Dave has been saying a lot over the last handful of days. There wasn't really much that was said after the loss and then the other loss and then the loss before that. Again, they've lost every game they've played since that game against who did we play on the trade? Winnipeg. Since playing Winnipeg on the on the day of the trade deadline. Not great for a team that had a chance. And now the chance is, I mean, if I showed you the graphic on Money Puck, which I've been doing, you know, see, even my poster is not liking what it's seeing. If I showed you the graphic, you couldn't even see the little teal blip. 0.7% chance of making the playoffs. Compare that to the Vegas Golden Knights, who we're going to play, 80.4% chance. 99.96 chance for the Oilers, 100% for Vancouver. Even Calgary is blipped up to a 1.6%. LA looking pretty good at 92.2%. Also, shout out to the homie Blake Bolden. We're expecting to see Blake on the ESPN broadcast tomorrow. I'll talk about that on tomorrow's game day episode of Locked on Kraken, but I wanted to do that while I was thinking about it. 100% chance for the Geek Squad, Morgan Geeky. I just, oh God, we lost to a team with a 3.7% chance in the Buffalo Sabres. They got a 3.7% chance to make the playoffs. We lost. Blues looking better. It wasn't looking great for the Blues a while ago, and now they've got a 4.5% chance. I have a soft place in my heart for Nashville. That's because of the amazing Ann Kimmel. But 98.6% chance. They might have been crying about the Tolvanen trade last year, but maybe they're not feeling the same way this season. To be fair and to be clear, I do not think Ellie Tolvanen is inherently at the top of the list of our problems. I've told you time and time again, I like that third line, although Tolvanen hasn't been on the third line, or at least in the last game, he wasn't, because again, the lines keep changing. But speaking of Ellie Tolvanen, let's hear from, I don't know what's happening with my poster. Let's hear from Ellie Tolvanen after the loss to the Buffalo Sabres.
Handled it from there, from the second period on.
I mean, not too bad, but I think we just have to be ready from the start of the puck drop. I mean, we got the early one, but I feel like we're just sloppy with the puck. No details, D-zone. Getting too many odd man rushes, and they're a good group of guys, and they're fighting for their play spot too. So I mean, some of the year we can't make those mistakes.
How much do you think that had to do with guys getting used to playing on different lines with different people?
To be honest, I don't think it matters at this point in the year. I feel like we have had a mindset that, play simple, play our style hockey, and it doesn't matter who you play with. I think we should be all in, and, we all know what makes us successful, and I think that's what we have to do.
How is it playing with Jordan and Maddie for you?
It's a lot of fun. Those two, they create a lot, so it's fun to play with those kind of players. Women have to be available all the time, and, they make elite plays that just try to get open, and I'm going to get your puck to you.
Good.
There's so many things that Ellie said there that I love. He was not willing to make any excuses regarding the lines. And why? Because at this time of year, you've been playing with them. That they didn't bring anybody in the trade deadline. They didn't bring it. You lost one, but you didn't bring anybody in. Nobody knew. You should know your teammates. That's number one. Number two, as you heard Ellie Tolvanen say, if you're playing simple, if you're doing what you have to do, it doesn't matter who you're playing with. He also talked about starting early, as far as getting a goal early, I should say. But that's getting a goal early, and this has been a theme for the Seattle Kraken. Getting an early goal for this Seattle Kraken team is not the same as starting early, starting on time. And you heard Ellie Tolvanen say that as well. We've seen in the last 4 or so games that there have been times where the Seattle Kraken were able to get even sometimes the first goal of the game, and they couldn't close. There's more that's happening here with the Seattle Kraken team. It's not blending. It's not meshing. And at some point in time, you got to look at the leadership. That being said, how many times can Larson, Gord, or Eberle, who you'll hear from in a little bit, what more can they say? That's why we've been hearing Dave is like, Coach Hack is like, we're not saying much. I'm a fan of practice. Are we talking about practice? How many practices are we, or what are we going to do? And, I told you that I've been messaging with the insiders, and there was a comment that I liked that I want to share. And it will kind of explain a little bit of that spaghetti on the wall situation and why it's time to try new things. And that maybe this is just a roster and this is a coaching staff that is dealing with the best that they have. So when you don't have enough, who's responsible for you having resources and tools that are not going to make it work? That's when you have to go to the front office. And that's why I said it in the off season. I felt it during the trade deadline and multiple days in between. The Seattle Kraken didn't do enough. And that becomes something where you have to look at the front office. So if we're looking at the front office, the question of the episode for the next segment, is this a failure? I told you to look up the word failure. I want you to define it for yourself. I'm going to see, we've already been talking about what's happening with the Seattle Kraken. So I'll summarize again what we've been seeing. And then you tell me in the comments. You tell me on the Locked On Kraken Insider subtext community. You tell me on social media. Is this a failure of a season? Let's hear from Eberle.
This homestand as a whole, what do you feel like has been missing in terms of execution?
Obviously offensively, we I don't know, we scored 34 goals in 5 games. Defensively, I thought we defended a lot. We defended all right. We just defended too much, so we weren't having any offense tonight. And then obviously tonight they let in 6. So just extremely frustrated, obviously, with the time of the year and where we are at. And, obviously the lack of execution and the lack of, really competing, just trying to find their guys. And, confidence goes a long way in this league. When you're feeling confident as a team, you create more, you hold on to pucks a little longer, and you do more. So we just don't really have that right now. We need to find that. But that being said, we're resilient. You should be resilient. You shouldn't have to, they should get one, and you should be like, all right, we're fine. Still 1-1 game. If they get 2 more, even we found a way to make it 3-2 going into the second. We're still in this match, so we're not quite there. I said it 2 years ago. The line between winning and losing is so thin, and right now we're on the other side of it. It's been kind of inconsistent throughout the whole year, and that's kind of been frustrating. And we need to find a way to just, with the last 15 games here every night. It's a privilege to be in this league. I've said that before. And, it's difficult when you have late nights like this.
How was it playing with?
It's a privilege to be in this league. Indeed it is. And maybe Eberle's onto something, because right now the Seattle Kraken are not playing as though they feel privileged to play for the Kraken, as though they feel privileged to play in the NHL. You even heard Eberle talk about confidence. Where's the energy? I'm not even talking sandpaper, but you heard again, yeah, we're scoring first, but if you give up the goal, that's some Kraken season 1 crap. Response goals. How many times do we talk about response goals? This is not good hockey from the Seattle Kraken. We've seen some wild hockey, 17 goals between 2 teams kind of hockey for this team. But this is not good hockey because it falls short in manageable ways. The Seattle Kraken right now are falling short of their potential. That's also different, though, than the Seattle Kraken being tapped out at potential, which is why I think we need to really start having more of a conversation, even though we've been talking about it all season. But what is the plan? What is the plan for the Seattle Kraken? So again, is this a failure? Let's talk about it coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Mentioned it at the top of the show. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Hey, listen, I travel a lot. I'll be in Albany. I know I told you that a few episodes ago for the women's basketball tournament, March Madness here. And so when I'm in a city that I'm not familiar with, I always go to Gametime. I don't always have downtime, but when I do have downtime, I head to Gametime and I try to find something culturally enriching. Sometimes I've been in Seattle when one of my favorite bands, Little Dragon, was in town, and I always try to catch the M's when I'm in Seattle. And the reason I love finding Mariners tickets on Gametime in particular is because when I go with my good friend, we have a particular section that we like to sit in, and we kind of know roughly what row and seats we like. Actually, I meet some Locked On Kraken listeners sometimes when I sit third base side at T-Mobile Park. So, I just like that I can make sure by viewing the seats before I purchase them that I'm sitting exactly where I want to have the best time and to have a familiar view. And so there are also a lot of other things that are great at Gametime that I didn't even get to, like the deals on tickets, zone deals, and of course the Gametime guarantee, which means that you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets for the same event in the same section and the same row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. I know I sure do. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Seattle hockey fans. Is this season a failure? Because it hasn't ended yet, although we're getting close. Is this season a failure? Will it be considered a failure? We're going to talk about that. I want to remind you, though, I talked about the M's for those listening to our regular show. And, it's baseball season, and we have experts that will be on our 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today at 7 p.m. Eastern time for the MLB season preview. It's coming exclusively on Locked On Sports Today. So if you want the season preview from the Locked On Network, from our MLB experts, you have to head to Locked On Sports Today. Again, Locked On Sports Today is our 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's also free on Amazon Fire TV Channels app. So go check it out. Is this season a failure? Is this season a failure? I'm going to say it one more time. This is your time to pause if you didn't do the homework from the first two sections. Is this season a failure? Definition of failure, according to, what is this? I don't know exactly what dictionary. According to Google, a lack of success, an economic policy that is doomed to fail. Is the example. An economic policy that is doomed to fail. A NHL hockey roster that is doomed to fail. I don't know, just putting it in context. Lack of success, non-success, non-fulfillment, defeat, frustration. I feel like I'm circling that last one, a word similar to failure, frustration. I've been frustrated this entire season. Other definition of failure. The omission of expected or required action. Oof. The omission of expected or required action. Failure. Did you just listen to the first 20 minutes of the show when I said that the Seattle Kraken, they're blowing defensive assignments. They're putting too much on their goaltending. They are thinking too much, not creating high danger chances. But part of the reason they're not creating high danger chances is because they're failing to use the ice surface to their advantage. They're playing too direct. They're overthinking things. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on. They're not starting on time, or if they do get the first goal, they give up another goal right away. I don't want to say they're making excuses. I almost said that. I really don't feel that the Seattle Kraken team makes excuses. I think they take it on the chin, as you say, and can be pretty transparent with what needs to change. but the omission of expected or required action. For me, it's the required action piece that's like, yeah, maybe according to this definition, this season is a failure. Non-observance, non-performance, a dereliction, remissness, and negligence. We are so negligent and so disrespectful at times of our goaltending. I can't imagine, how Joey Daccord has felt at times, how Philip Grubauer felt all of season 1. Poor Martin Jones. I mean, we even see it with Chris Drieger and his eyes. I think that's honestly just something that he does. But I always like to use that image of him with the water bottle and his eyes being like, whoa, what's going on? Or Joey Daccord, side eye. I mean, those are jokes. We can still have fun. This was an intense episode, but I mean, again, I'm still going to be here covering the Seattle Kraken. We're still going to have great things to talk about. I know we had Allison Lucan on the show again this season, and y'all asked her if we were going to see the return of the series that's promoted by Filson. She was like, don't worry about it. Hey, don't worry about it. I mean, I added the New York style accent, but she said, don't worry about it. Yanni Gourde, he likes to carve and etch wood. I forget what exactly like you call it, but he is a woodworker. Will Borgen fly fishing. So, those are the good things, and we're always going to talk about those and have fun with those. But we cannot, it would be a dereliction. It's reminding me of Zoolander. I'm not going to say that joke on the air, but if you know, you know. Oh, goodness. I would be a dereliction of my responsibilities as a co-host who, yes, I watch the Seattle Kraken. I enjoy watching the Seattle Kraken, but my roots are as a journalist and an analyst. And I'm not just going to, shuck and jive, sing and dance for you on the show. I'm going to give you context. You might not agree, like some of you don't agree that Burakovsky is enough when I say he's not. We don't have to agree. And that's fine. But we're going to be real. And according to these definitions, maybe this is a failure. But what's also true? And there's all these different motivational quotes. But a lot of people will say failure is that stepping stone to success. And, it's not so much a failure. People have all kinds of more positive spins on failure. Just because you failed at something doesn't mean it was bad or wrong. And it certainly shouldn't mean that it's not something that we learn from. So it is a failure. It is falling short of the goal. I have been pretty transparent that anything short of matching last year's success, getting to the second round, was likely going to be an indictment not only on this season, but also last season, particularly with how we did at the front office. I've been saying that for months. Everydayers, OGers, back me up in the comments. I've been saying that for months. We fell short. We failed in this mission. But the beautiful thing about life, if we're lucky enough, we have multiple missions. We have multiple missions if we're lucky. But we also have to acknowledge and accept that not every next mission is promised. Whether we're talking, there's all kinds of reasons you might not get to the next mission. Trade deadline, you run out of time, you run out of resources, and on and on and on. So you're not guaranteed a chance to correct your mistakes, to go back and put in more effort. Because sometimes you will fail, and it's not that you did anything wrong. It's just that someone else outperformed you. They were more prepared than you. And that is a different type of failure. Was last season a failure? According to some of these definitions, maybe yes. But that failure, air quotes for those not watching on YouTube, that failure feels categorically different than this year's team, which, yes, I am saying on this episode feels like a failure. We did not meet the mission. We did not uphold the standard. And there were questions that we needed answers that to this day have not been answered. That's a failure to me. We are failing this part of the mission. We're running out of time to course correct. It's going to be dang near impossible to get to the playoffs this year. I don't think technically it's mathematically impossible at this moment that I'm recording, but the chances are that we're not making the playoffs. That's a failure as a part of one mission. And there are multiple missions within a season, I would argue. We're not meeting expectations when it comes to that. We're not meeting basic standards of what it takes to win hockey games in the NHL. We are offensively anemic. We're not healthy. That's a failure that you cannot, it's out of our control, out of the Seattle Kraken's control to some extent. This feels like a failure. Now, how we define that air quotes failure within the context of this season, or even within the context of the franchise, that's where you have to start having the front office, in my opinion, make swift actions to course correct. We are not on target. We are a boat floating in the abyss. To me, this has to be a course correction from the front office. And remember, Ron Francis also got an extension. Dave Haxel got an extension. Ron Francis got an extension. We now know Jordan Eberle got an extension. But a lot and all, arguably, of those people that I just named are failing to meet the mission of this year, at times in the season, at times shift by shift. But yeah, there have been some failures this season. Do you want to say this season was a failure? As of right now, it's feeling that way for me and my standards. But I want to hear from you. Whether you're an insider or you're watching on YouTube, listening on your favorite podcast platform, is this season a failure? Let me know at Locked On Kraken. You can also find me personally at Black Rosie Media. You can also find me at Erica_L like for Lindsay _Ayala. That's where I do a lot of my CBS writing. Let me know. Is this season a failure? Do you define it as a failure? Let me know why you do or why you don't. I want to hear. Do you like that definition? I found it on the internet. There are some things I liked and certainly resonated with, but not all of it. Let me know. Thanks as always for making us a part of your daily destination. Go listen to Locked On Sports today. Be kind to yourselves. It's not easy to talk about failures of other people, let alone of yourself when you feel you're falling short. But remember, if we're lucky, we have a chance to correct the mission or to be successful in a new mission. So be kind to yourself. Be real, but be kind, and certainly be kind to one another. We got a game day episode tomorrow, so hold fast, stay true, loud and proud, we say. So the ESPN crew picks it up. Let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode of this here program, Locked On Kraken. Peace.